Welcome back to the deep dive.
Today, we're not just looking at a major corporation, we're examining an entire economic ecosystem. It's so vast, so complex, and so ambitious that its operations, well, they span from trying to cure aging all the way to designing quantum computers.
We're plunging into the structure, the ambition, and the deep, pervasive legal challenges of Alphabet Inc.
And we are doing this at what is an absolutely staggering moment in the company's trajectory.
It really is. To give you a hook right out of the gate, Alphabet just recently, on September 15, 2025, it achieved a financial feat that only 3 other companies have ever managed.
Right.
It became the 4th company in the world, trailing only NVIDIA, Microsoft, and Apple, to top the monumental $3 trillion market cap.
And that figure isn't just a number, you know. It's a declaration of power, and maybe more importantly, of investor belief in its future dominance.
So our mission today is to look far beyond the search bar, far beyond the core Google products that made them famous in the first place.
Exactly. We need to uncover the intricate holding company structure that even makes the scale possible. We need to look at the audacious moonshot projects, what they call the other bets,
Right.
the source of its seemingly limitless financial power, and, critically, the intense ethical and legal headwinds it's facing pretty much all across the globe.
It's a study in corporate dichotomy, really. You have this unparalleled innovation married to just inescapable scrutiny.
So for that foundational snapshot, Alphabet Inc., it's the American multinational technology conglomerate, a holding company, headquartered out of the famous Googleplex in Mountain View, California.
And structurally, it's a giant. While it's always, vying for that top spot, it currently stands as the world's 3rd largest technology company by revenue.
Yeah, just a step behind Amazon and Apple. But here's the interesting financial twist. When you measure it purely by annual profit, Alphabet is actually the largest technology company in the world.
So the money-making machine is remarkably efficient.
Incredibly so.
And the specific date we're focusing on for its creation is October 2, 2015. That's the moment it was formally founded through that big restructuring of Google.
Right, and for those of you tracking the markets, you know the stock. It trades on the NASDAQ GUOGL for the Class A voting shares and GOG for the Class C non-voting shares.
It's a foundational pillar. It's integrated into both the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100.
And that dual-class structure you just mentioned, that's actually a hint of the whole philosophical structure we're about to explore.
Okay, let's unpack this creation story. Because it's not just some historical footnote, right? This move in 2015 was, it was a fundamental, strategic, and philosophical divorce.
It really was.
So what was the core motivation that drove the founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, to carve up Google into this new conglomerate, Alphabet? Why not just keep everything under the Google banner?
The primary motivation, and this is coming from Larry Page himself in the founding letter, it really revolved around 2 core principles: autonomy and accountability.
Autonomy and accountability.
Yeah. For years, Google had been operating under this one enormous, ever-expanding roof. As Page put it, they wanted to make the core Google business cleaner and more accountable.
So basically, the search engine, the advertising machine, it needed a singular focus.
Precisely. You can imagine the management challenge, right? When the search engine team is sharing a budget with a company that's trying to extend human life and another one that's building self-driving cars, the focus gets diluted.
It has to.
So the new structure was designed to give greater operational autonomy to those other group companies, the ones operating outside of the core internet services, what they now call the other bets.
Those moonshots.
Page noted that these projects were, quote, pretty far afield of our main internet products. By moving them out into their own independent subsidiaries under the Alphabet umbrella, they gave them what he called more management scale.
And what did that mean in practice? More management scale.
It means Calico or Waymo could now recruit their own specific CEOs, establish their own financial reporting, and just pursue their missions without being constantly constrained by the quarterly demands and the huge advertising infrastructure of Google.
So it wasn't just a physical separation. It was like a philosophical declaration that these moonshots deserve to be judged on their own merits.
Exactly. Not just as eccentric hobbies funded by the search department.
Right.
By slimming down Google, they improved the transparency and oversight of what we're doing, and that's a direct quote from Page. Before Alphabet, if Google had a bad quarter, You didn't really know why.
You wouldn't know if it was search ads slowing down,
Okay.
or if the self-driving car program just spent $1 billion on R&D.
You've got it.
Yep.
Now, the performance of the core business is clearly segmented from the high-risk, high-reward bets. And that transparency was absolutely critical for investors who, frankly, often disliked the financial opacity of the old structure.
Now, what's fascinating here, and what really gets to the core philosophy of this shift, is the source of the inspiration. This organizational model wasn't, developed in a vacuum in Silicon Valley. It came from a very different, much older school of thought.
That's absolutely right. The philosophical and structural blueprint came from the unlikeliest of places. Warren Buffett and his conglomerate, Berkshire Hathaway.
Wait, really? Warren Buffett?
Really? Former executive Eric Schmidt revealed in 2017 that he actually encouraged Page and Brin to meet with Buffett to study the Berkshire model.
That comparison is jarring. I mean, Buffett buys railroads and insurance companies, stable, mature, cash-generating businesses. Alphabet is funding revolutionary, volatile science that might not turn a profit for 20 years.
Yeah.
Isn't that a superficial comparison, fundamentally?
It sounds superficial on the surface, I agree. But the insight they adopted wasn't about the type of business they were buying, it was about the management structure. The key insight was the holding company model itself. Managing a sprawling empire made up of these semi-independent subsidiaries, each led by strong, trusted, highly autonomous CEOs.
So it's about decentralization.
It is. Buffett prioritizes decentralized management and long-term capital allocation over micromanagement. That's the ideological engine. Page and Brin wanted to replicate that. They wanted to grant their subsidiary CEOs the freedom to operate, knowing they were backed by the central financial strength of Alphabet.
They wanted to inject the long-term patience of Omaha into the fast-moving chaos of Silicon Valley.
That's a perfect way to put it.
That makes the name Alphabet even more literal then. It's not just a bet on technology, it's a bet on superior long-term capital management, trying to achieve an alpha return through that structural stability.
Precisely. It's an investment philosophy as much as it is a corporate structure. Now let's look at the legal mechanics of this shift, because this was a huge reorganization accomplished remarkably quickly and without needing a messy shareholder vote.
How exactly do you do that?
Yep.
How do you execute a reorganization of this scale without the owners, the shareholders, approving it?
It was a bit of a corporate shell game, executed under Delaware General Corporation law. Alphabet is incorporated in Delaware, which allows for certain corporate maneuvers without immediate shareholder approval, provided, certain criteria are met.
So what was the maneuver?
The key was a reversal of roles. Google Inc. was technically the original owner. A placeholder subsidiary, which is basically a temporary new company, was created. Then Google Inc. was merged into that placeholder subsidiary.
So the original giant Google was just absorbed by a new temporary entity.
That's it. Through this merger, which is all governed by Delaware law, Google Inc.'s stock was automatically converted into Alphabet stock. It was a formal corporate gymnastics routine that made Google the child and Alphabet the new parent.
Without disrupting the stock market.
Exactly. Alphabet retained Google Inc.'s stock price history and those familiar ticker symbols, GOOG and GOGL. It created the new legal identity while maintaining the financial history for the market.
That level of legal and financial maneuvering is a real testament to the speed and complexity of big tech. But they took an even more definitive step a couple of years later to finalize that legal separation.
They did. In September 2017, they created a subsidiary known as x66 Homes Holdings, Inc. Now, if you look at the name,
X66, that's the Roman numeral for 26.
the number of letters in the alphabet, it's a very clever structural Easter egg.
Beyond the clever naming, what was the actual function of X66 Holdings?
Its function was purely mechanical and legal. This entity was set up specifically to hold the equity of the various bets, Calico, Waymo, X, and so on. Think of it as an internal corporate trust fund.
Okay, so it's a legal wall.
It's the final wall of separation. By holding the equity here, it formalized the process of valuing these disparate, often pre-revenue companies, and more importantly, legally separating them from the massive liabilities and operations of Google LLC. It protects the core search business from, say, a Waymo self-driving accident lawsuit or a total failure of Calico.
It really shows the immense foresight, locking down that structural foundation, right down to the Roman numerals, to guarantee that the structure mirrors the philosophy. Decentralized autonomy under one controlling financial umbrella.
Right. And moving from those structural mechanics to the corporate identity, the very name Alphabet is loaded with layered meaning. It's designed to communicate both their mission and their financial goal.
It certainly is. Larry Page laid out that dual meaning. On the humanistic side, he liked that the alphabet is a collection of letters that represent language, which is fundamentally how we organize information. And of course, organizing the world's information is the core purpose of Google search.
And then there's the critical financial layer. Page also explicitly said that they liked the name because it signifies alphabet. In finance, alpha is the investment return you achieve above a market benchmark.
So they were signaling to the world that this new holding company would strive for investment outperformance, the alpha, through their ambitious bets.
It's a statement of radical ambition baked right into the name.
But there's always a slightly funnier, more humble anecdote behind these mythical names, isn't there?
There is, and Eric Schmidt provided it. He disclosed that the original, highly practical inspiration for the name actually came from the street address of one of their European offices. The Google Hamburg office was located on ABC Strasse.
So a $3 trillion global conglomerate is named after a German street address.
It certainly grounds the mythology a bit.
And despite being the company whose mission is to organize all the world's information, they ran headlong into a very human-scale naming conflict. They couldn't even organize their own digital presence perfectly.
It's the ultimate irony for a search giant. They don't own the most intuitive domain names. They operate under abc.xyz, using that, relatively niche .xyz top-level domain.
Why not alphabet.com?
Because alphabet.com is owned by a fleet management division of BMW. When the announcement dropped, BMW immediately made a public statement saying they'd be closely examining the trademark implications. And to add to the confusion, they also don't own abc.com,
Which belongs to
Disney's American Broadcasting Company.
It's a hilarious, humbling reminder that even the masters of the digital universe have to navigate analog reality. But maybe the most telling identity shift involves their corporate mantra. Google famously operated under the unofficial slogan, "Don't be evil."
Right, that phrase was iconic. It was often cited in early antitrust debates as a moral compass.
It's a word of the day.
It underwent a subtle but profoundly significant evolution. When the parent company, Alphabet, was formally established in October 2015, it adopted a related but broader motto for its code of corporate conduct: do the right thing.
That shift from "don't be evil" to "do the right thing" is fascinating. It sounds less defensive and more proactive, almost like a statement of intent to govern.
That's exactly the implication. Don't be evil was a perfect motto for a startup disrupting incumbents. It was about moral restraint, avoiding the bad practices of the monopolies that came before it.
But as Google grew into a monopoly itself, the challenge changed.
It did. The new parent company, Alphabet, is taking on massive societally defining challenges like curing aging, building autonomous cities, defining the future of AI. In those spaces, simply not being evil isn't enough. You have to make tough, proactive, ethical decisions about what constitutes the right thing, often in areas where there's no established moral or legal framework.
So while the parent company is now focused on this proactive governance, the original mantra didn't completely vanish.
No, don't be evil was retained in the code of conduct of the subsidiary, Google LLC. So the search engine, YouTube, Android, the services that touch billions of users and face anti-monopoly pressure daily, they still operate under that original defensive umbrella.
But the holding company is guided by the more ambiguous, proactive mandate of "do the right thing."
That's the split.
Now let's shift to the people steering this ship. The senior management structure evolved sharply in 2019 when the founders decided to step back.
That was a pivotal moment in December 2019. Larry Page and Sergey Brin jointly announced they were stepping down from their executive roles page as CEO of Alphabet and Brin as president.
But they didn't just walk away.
Not at all. They retained their status as employees, board members, and most importantly, controlling shareholders. They relinquished the day-to-day administrative burden, but kept the ultimate voting authority over the company's strategic direction.
That is the core of their power, enabled by that unique ownership structure.
It is. The executive leadership was consolidated under Sundar Pichai, who was already the CEO of Google. He then assumed the CEO role for the entire parent company, Alphabet.
So he's in charge of both the core business and all the other bets.
Correct. And the operational stability is further bolstered by figures like John L. Hennessy, the current chairman since 2018, Ruth Porat as president and chief investment officer, and Anat Ashkenazi as the CFO. This team handles the financial strategy and execution.
Speaking of control, let's revisit that unique ownership and voting power structure. If I, as a listener, bought 1% of Alphabet stock, would I have 1% of the say in how the company is run?
Absolutely not. And this is critical to understanding how the moonshots even get funded. While Alphabet is mainly owned by institutional investors, over 60% of the shares are held by massive entities like the Vanguard Group and BlackRock. These are mostly Class C shares.
And Class C shares carry no vote.
Exactly. The Class A shares carry 1 vote, but the founders and insiders primarily hold Class B shares, which carry 10 votes each.
10 votes per share. So what does that mean in practical terms for the founders?
It means that while Larry Page holds only about 3.0% of all outstanding shares and Sergey Brin holds a similar 3.0%, that concentration of supervoting Class B stock means they jointly control the majority of the voting power, along with a few other insiders.
It's an entrenched structure.
It is. It's designed specifically to insulate the company from short-term market pressures. They have the financial firepower to fund Calico for 20 years without worrying that an activist hedge fund is going to force them to abandon the project next quarter. This is the structural cost of their revolutionary autonomy, the centralization of decision-making authority in the hands of the founders.
That structure sets the stage perfectly for exploring the scale of their ambition in the portfolio. Alphabet is the parent, but the Google subsidiary is the absolute financial juggernaut, the engine funding everything else.
Google remains the largest subsidiary by far. It serves as the umbrella for all of Alphabet's core internet-related businesses.
This includes the massive, globally dominant services that generate the vast majority of the revenue.
Right. We're talking about the Android operating system, which basically controls the global mobile landscape, YouTube, the dominant video platform, and of course Google Search itself, which, as we'll discuss, is the source of so much of their antitrust scrutiny.
And it's the astonishing diversity outside of this core that makes Alphabet so unique. So let's delve into these other bets, the moonshot portfolio. These are run by their own CEOs and held to a high standard of eventual commercial viability.
These truly are projects ripped straight from the realm of science fiction. They reveal the deepest, longest-term bets Alphabet is making on the future of humanity and technology. We can break down some of the most significant.
Okay, let's start with the one aimed at redefining human lifespan.
That would be Calico, which stands for California Life Company. Its focus is explicitly on human health and throwing just staggering amounts of capital at the complex biological black box that is aging. It's headed by Arthur D. Levinson.
This isn't just incremental healthcare reform we're talking about.
Not at all. Calico's mission is radical longevity to fundamentally overcome the mechanisms of aging itself, the philosophical weight of a for-profit company pursuing immortality. While it raises profound ethical questions, but from an investment perspective, the potential market is literally everyone on Earth.
Then you have the company that is actively transforming urban streetscapes and logistics right now, Waymo.
Right, Waymo. It's the autonomous driving technology arm, led by Dmitry Dolgov and Takedra Moakana. And Waymo is far past the conceptual stage.
Oh yeah, it has commercial ride-hailing operations running extensively in dense urban environments like San Francisco.
And the expansion is aggressive. In January 2024, they filed an application with the California Public Utilities Commission to expand their driverless service into Los Angeles.
That expansion into LA is huge, considering the traffic and complexity there. But the whole autonomous vehicle space is competitive and has faced some major headwinds.
It has. The industry has been hit by safety concerns, regulatory skepticism, especially after high-profile incidents involving competitors like Cruise, GM subsidiary. Waymo's ability to successfully expand requires overcoming not just the technological hurdles, but also the intense public scrutiny and regulatory resistance.
Its success is a crucial test case for whether Alphabet can turn a moonshot into a commercially viable, high-margin operational business.
It really is. And we can't forget the actual incubator, the central research lab where all these wild ideas are born, tested, and sometimes quickly killed.
That's X Development, simply called X.
The dedicated research and development group for moonshot technologies. It's overseen by Astra Teller, who famously holds the title of Captain of Moonshots.
And he cultivates a culture of calculated fast failure.
Right. He insists on it. He talks about identifying and killing projects that can't scale or aren't viable quickly enough to prevent them from becoming these zombie projects that just drain capital without ever achieving escape velocity.
That mentality embracing failure is essential to the Alphabet, isn't it? You have to kill 10 projects to find the one that justifies the whole enterprise.
Absolutely. The closure of Loon LLC, the Internet Buy Balloon project, in January 2021 is the perfect example of that ruthless calculus.
They were technically successful, though. They got internet connectivity via high-altitude balloons.
They did. But the CEO cited a very simple, defining reason for the shutdown. They lacked a scalable and sustainable business model. They proved the concept, but they couldn't make the economics work. So they cut the cord, freeing up billions of dollars and engineering talent for other pursuits, like quantum computing or AI drug discovery.
Which brings us to their intensive work, blending artificial intelligence with biology.
That sector is split into two major companies. First, you have Isomorphic Labs, launched specifically to use cutting-edge AI for drug discovery. It's headed by Demis Hassabis, the CEO of DeepMind, which ensures that Alphabet's foundational AI research is piped directly into the pharmaceutical pipeline.
The goal being to revolutionize the decades-long, multi-billion-dollar process of drug development.
Exactly. And then there's the broader health data company.
That's very
Right. Also deeply focused on human health, but often concentrating more on medical devices, research tools, and data analytics, things like continuous glucose monitoring or clinical trial optimization. It's managed by Stephen Gillette and operates in the more immediate health space, contrasted with Calico's focus on radical longevity.
Finally, let's cover the infrastructure and logistics bets that underpin the future of commerce and connectivity.
On the logistics side, we have Wing, which is focused on drone-based delivery of freight. Headed by Adam Woodworth, Wing is tackling that critical last-mile problem, attempting to bypass congested roads by using automated drone fleets for fast, localized package delivery.
And they are operating commercially in several small markets globally.
They are. And on the connectivity front, you have the project that directly takes on the incumbent cable and telecom giants.
Google Fiber.
Led by Dinesh Jain, providing internet access via high-speed fiber optic connections. This is a crucial strategic bet because it controls the pipes through which all their core data flows. It competes directly with incumbent ISPs in specific targeted markets, not only as a profit center, but also as a way to prove that high-speed competitive internet is possible.
Which pressures the rest of the market.
Exactly. And all this innovation is fueled and shaped by their internal financial infrastructure.
The investment arms.
Absolutely. Alphabet has two powerful investment arms. Capital G provides private equity, usually targeting growth stage tech companies that are already showing massive potential. Then you have GV, formerly Google Ventures, which is the venture capital arm, focusing on early stage, seed-level tech companies.
So Alphabet is not only developing its own internal future, but also acting as a massive venture capital accelerator, actively shaping the entire technology ecosystem around it.
That's the idea.
That portfolio is vast, but as we've noted, it's highly fluid. What happens when these experiments succeed or fail to stand alone?
When they mature or overlap with the core business, they tend to get absorbed back into Google LLC. We saw this with Nest Labs, the smart home company.
Merged into Google in February 2018.
And Chronicle Security, which merged with Google Cloud in June 2019. Even the ambitious urban planning initiative, Sidewalk Labs, was absorbed into Google in 2021 after it hit regulatory and pandemic-related headwinds.
So these moves show the system working as designed. The bets either die off or they grow up and become part of the cash-generating core.
That's the life cycle.
Now we transition from the corporate architecture and the science projects to the raw economic power that makes it all possible. Alphabet's financial scale is truly immense, cementing its place in that exclusive trillion-dollar club.
When you look at the 2024 figures, you start to grasp the scale. The revenue for that year hit $350.2 billion.
Yeah.
But what is more telling is their remarkable efficiency. That generated a net income of $100.12 billion against total assets of $450.26 billion. By September 2025, they were employing 190,167 people worldwide.
This is a government-sized organization operating within a for-profit structure.
It is. But despite the hundreds of projects, the autonomous cars, the longevity research, the financial core remains incredibly singular. It all still comes down to advertising.
It does. This is the central financial paradox of Alphabet. As of their 2017 annual report, and the figures have remained broadly consistent, a staggering 86% of Alphabet's total revenues came from performance and brand advertising.
Meaning AdSense and Google Ads. It is a dominant financial dependency.
Why is that revenue so sticky? Why is it so hard for competitors to erode that 86%?
It's due to entrenched market position, data advantage, and critically default contracts. Because Google Search is the default engine on nearly all mobile phones, especially Android devices, but also through lucrative deals with Apple, they effectively capture the vast majority of search intent globally.
And this intent translates directly into highly targeted advertising revenue.
much of which flows from international operations, which accounted for 53% of the revenue. That ad dominance is a self-reinforcing financial machine that funds the entire moonshot apparatus.
And that machine is what allowed them to reach these dizzying valuation milestones. Let's trace the recent trajectory into the trillion-dollar club, culminating in that 3 trillion mark.
The initial ascent was rapid. Alphabet briefly became the world's most valuable publicly traded company back in February 2016, momentarily eclipsing Apple before settling back into second or third place.
But the first major step into that elite financial realm came in January 2020.
That's when it became the fourth U.S. company to reach a $1 trillion market value.
But the jumps in 2024 and 2025 were fueled by a strategic pivot, particularly regarding how they treat their massive cash pile.
Absolutely. They crossed the $2 trillion market valuation threshold for the first time on April 26, 2024. This surge wasn't just about new tech releases. It was a strong signal of maturity and investor appeasement.
It followed two key financial announcements.
Right. The company's first ever dividend payout to shareholders, which thrilled investors looking for passive income, and a massive $70 billion stock buyback program.
So this signaled that Alphabet was not just hoarding cash for moonshots, it was willing to return capital to its owners.
Which increased confidence in valuations significantly. And that confidence then propelled them to the ultimate peak in 2025.
Correct. On September 15th, 2025, Alphabet officially topped the $3 trillion market cap.
This milestone was driven by the market's continued enthusiasm for their AI advancements and, importantly, a more favorable than expected resolution regarding a major antitrust ruling, which we'll discuss shortly. Investors basically breathed a sigh of relief that the ruling did not force a structural breakup of the company.
Now, that market cap is predicated on the belief that they will continue to dominate and innovate. So let's look at how much they actually spend on securing that future.
The investment figures are staggering. In 2022, Alphabet had the second highest expenditure on research and development worldwide, amounting to a colossal $39.5 billion US dollars.
To put that in perspective, that R&D budget is larger than the GDP of many mid-sized nations.
It is. They are aggressively pouring money back into speculative growth areas, proving the alphabet isn't just rhetoric. Moreover, they are agile investors, acquiring 7 of their own capital-backed startups in the 2017 financial year alone, showing they use their investment arms as feeder mechanisms for internal growth.
But the innovation that really justified the stock boost and captured the imagination recently wasn't just incremental AI improvement. It was a genuine quantum leap.
It was a game changer in quantum computing in late 2024. On December 10, 2024, Alphabet unveiled its new quantum computing chip, which they named Willow. This announcement caused a significant jump in the stock, reflecting the profound confidence the market placed in this technology.
What made Willow so transformative? We often hear about quantum computing, but what was the specific breakthrough here?
The significance wasn't just raw computational speed, although that was impressive. Willow reportedly solved a highly complex problem in 5 minutes, a task that would require a classical supercomputer longer than the age of the universe.
So what was the real breakthrough then?
The real breakthrough was in tackling the biggest hurdle in quantum computing, error correction.
Explain why error correction is such a massive hurdle.
Quantum computers use qubits, which are incredibly sensitive. Any external vibration, a stray electromagnetic field, or a temperature fluctuation causes the system to immediately decohere, meaning the quantum state collapses and the calculation is corrupted.
So that constant error rate is why practical quantum computing has been stuck in laboratories.
For the most part, yes. Willow's design reduces and corrects these error rates in real time, making the computations stable and reliable for the first time outside of highly controlled, small-scale experiments. If this is truly scalable, it moves quantum computing from theoretical physics to practical engineering.
And the immediate implications for the listener are enormous, far beyond the stock price.
Absolutely. Reliable quantum computing could revolutionize materials science, designing perfect batteries or superconductors, for instance. It could radically accelerate drug modeling and discovery, giving companies like Isomorphic Labs a colossal advantage. It fundamentally changes the calculation capabilities of finance, logistics, and encryption. It is a technology that justifies a $1 trillion valuation jump just on its potential alone.
Yet the very size, dominance, and technological leap we just discussed inevitably draw immense legal and ethical scrutiny. That $39.5 billion R&D bill guarantees not only technological leaps, but profound legal battles over market control.
And this complexity is the often overlooked cost of that $3 trillion valuation.
And the most important current battle is the antitrust fight here in the United States.
Precisely. The U.S. Department of Justice filed a major lawsuit in 2020 alleging monopolistic practices, primarily targeting Google Search's dominance through anti-competitive contracts.
And the outcome was a landmark moment for the U.S. government.
It was. In August 2024, a U.S. district court found Alphabet guilty of violating antitrust law. This was the first antitrust ruling against a major U.S. company in 24 years, effectively signaling a renewed government willingness to take on big tech.
What exactly did the court find them guilty of?
The court findings centered on the arrangements Google makes with mobile device manufacturers and wireless carriers to ensure Google Search is the default pre-installed search engine. The court agreed with the DOJ that these lucrative contracts essentially barred competition from the market.
But the ruling didn't mandate a breakup, which was the major relief investors celebrated.
Right. It established that Alphabet had acted unlawfully to maintain its dominance, but didn't force a breakup. Alphabet has, predictably, appealed the ruling, setting the stage for a Supreme Court battle that will define digital competition for a generation.
But the scrutiny is not confined to the U.S. This is a comprehensive global issue.
That's right. They face concurrent legal actions worldwide. In France, they settled an antitrust suit with the French Autorité de la Concurrence for $270 million in June 2021.
Which sounds like a large fine,
But it amounted to less than 0.7% of their yearly earnings at the time, leading to the argument that, for Alphabet, fines are merely the cost of doing business. Furthermore, Japan launched its own antitrust probe in June 2021, specifically examining Alphabet's dealings and contracts with Japanese smartphone makers.
mirroring the U.S. government's focus on mobile dominance.
Exactly. And beyond government regulators, there have been massive private lawsuits that highlight the cutthroat nature of the technology they're developing, specifically in the Waymo sphere.
The famous 2017 legal battle between Waymo and Uber is a perfect illustration.
It is. Alphabet sued Uber, alleging that proprietary self-driving car technology, including critical LiDAR sensor designs, had been stolen by a former Waymo engineer, Anthony Lewandowski, who then joined Uber. The case centered on 14,000 documents that Lewandowski was alleged to have downloaded before he left.
That lawsuit went right to the heart of trade secrecy in Silicon Valley. How was it finally resolved?
It settled dramatically in February 2018. Uber ultimately agreed not to use the disputed self-driving technology and provided Waymo with a 0.34% equity stake in Uber,
Which at the time was valued at.
approximately $245 million. So while Waymo didn't get cash, they got a stake in a competitor and a legal injunction preventing the use of the disputed tech.
And let's not overlook the consumer privacy angle, which is a constant risk for a company that relies entirely on user data.
They faced a major class action settlement in July 2020 related to a privacy bug in Google Plus DOM. This bug exposed non-public account data, allowing app developers access to user information without proper consent. The class action lawsuit settled for $7.5 million.
Wait, a settlement for exposing private user data that touches millions of people resulted in payouts ranging from $5 to $12 per claimant.
Yes, that's the reality of large-scale class action settlements. The total dollar amount sounds large, but divided among millions of claimants, the individual payout often amounts to the cost of a few cups of coffee.
Which reinforces that perception we mentioned earlier, that for companies of this financial magnitude, privacy fines can sometimes be viewed as a budgeted operational expense rather than a catastrophic deterrent.
It's a fair criticism.
Shifting to internal affairs, the company's treatment of its vast workforce has also drawn intense scrutiny, particularly following the 2023 mass layoffs.
The 2023 layoffs were widely criticized for their speed and lack of humanity, especially given the company's incredible financial health. Alphabet cut 12,000 jobs, which was about 6% of its global workforce.
But the devastating element wasn't just the cuts themselves, which were framed by CEO Sundar Pichai as a necessary adjustment. It was the clinical execution.
Exactly. Many employees, including long-tenured and recently promoted staff, discovered they'd been terminated only upon losing access to their company accounts. Email, internal systems, badge access, often overnight or while they were away from their computers.
It was a stark contrast between the company's philosophical mandate to do the right thing and the cold, automated reality of a mass termination process.
It really was. And they have also faced explicit challenges regarding labor organizing efforts and corporate response to internal dissent.
Right. In December 2020, the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB, filed a formal complaint against the company.
That's right. The NLRB alleged that Alphabet Inc. engaged in unlawful monitoring and questioning of several Google workers and unlawfully placed employees on administrative leave. These actions were alleged to be in retribution for employees engaging in unionization attempts and protesting company policies.
And Alphabet's response?
They've consistently denied these allegations, maintaining that its internal disciplinary actions were legal and justified, but the filing itself highlights the deep friction between labor and management at the tech giant.
We also need to touch upon the impact of the volatile global political landscape, most notably the situation in Russia.
Alphabet's operations in Russia were severely impacted starting in May 2022. Russian authorities seized Google's local bank account. Since they couldn't access their funds to pay vendors and staff, the local Russian subsidiary was forced to file for bankruptcy a month later.
But despite the financial collapse of the subsidiary, it's a testament to the global nature of their services that the core free platforms remained available.
They did. Google Search, YouTube, and Gmail remained available to Russian users, providing a continued, uncensored path for information.
Finally, let's address the most recent and arguably most controversial corporate conduct decision in the content space: the reversal of their long-standing misinformation policy in 2025.
This happened in September 2025 and generated immediate, intense controversy. Alphabet announced it would reinstate YouTube creators who had previously been banned for spreading misinformation concerning both COVID-19 and the 2020 U.S. presidential election.
This represents a fundamental shift away from the stringent content moderation policies they enforced during those events. What was the rationale they provided for this significant reversal?
The company cited an appeal process letter where they alleged that the previous administration had pressured YouTube to remove certain non-violative user-generated content that contained misinformation.
So they framed the reinstatement as an action to uphold free expression.
And resist government overreach in content removal, yes, emphasizing their role as a global platform rather than a curator of factual authority.
Yet the resulting criticism was harsh, suggesting the policy prioritized platform openness over verifiable facts.
It was. Critics argued that by reinstating creators who spread harmful health or political falsehoods, Alphabet was prioritizing the maximization of user engagement and free expression over a commitment to truth and public health. This decision forces Alphabet to navigate an increasingly thin political and ethical tightrope.
Wrestling between its original goal of organizing the world's information and its evolving and contested responsibility as the primary global steward of media and content.
It's a classic example of do the right thing colliding with the harsh realities of platform governance.
What an incredible picture we've painted of Alphabet Inc. We started with a philosophical reorganization, inspired by the structural stability of Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, designed explicitly to grant autonomy to the moonshot projects. We've watched that company achieve a historic $3 trillion market cap on the back of pioneering quantum chips like Willow and world-dominant AI.
And yet, simultaneously, this same entity is facing immense global legal scrutiny. It's been found guilty of antitrust violations in the U.S., forced into bankruptcy in Russia, and is settling massive lawsuits that result in minimal payouts to consumers.
Not to mention wrestling with major internal corporate challenges, from the lack of humanity and mass layoffs to these profound, ethically charged questions about content moderation and the management of global information flow.
It is the ultimate dichotomy, a structure built for stability and long-term vision, yet its operations are defined by rapid disruption and constant existential legal risk.
And just to reiterate that scale, as of September 2025, Alphabet employs 190,167 people, managing a portfolio that stretches from solving the errors in quantum computing and running drone delivery services, all the way back to the simple search engine that indexes language itself.
So we return to the structural contradiction at the core of Alphabet. The entire organization was engineered to allow the Alphabet's Calico, Waymo, the autonomy to pursue revolutionary science, insulated from short-term market noise.
But we established that over 80% of Alphabet's actual realized revenue still relies on its core advertising business, that single Google search subsidiary.
Which leads us to the fundamental provocative question for you, the listener, to mull over. If the entire revolutionary autonomy of Alphabet is financed by a single advertising-dependent cash cow, How long can the alphabet truly afford to fund moonshot projects that operate so far afield of the internet? And what is the true structural cost of their revolutionary autonomy if the entire foundation rests on one financial pillar?
That structural dependence is the deep dive for another day. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of Alphabet Inc.